Tonight, I hope to talk on the dependent origination, Paticca Samuppada. This is quite one of the deep topics in the Buddha's teachings. And this dependent origination is quite an important topic. It is stated in the suttas that there are few important topics in the Buddha's teachings which, if you understand, you can attain the various stages of path and fruit, Aryahood. So dependent origination is one. Another one is the 5 aggregates of attachment, Panchupadana Khandha. Another one is the 6 sense bases, Salayatana. Another one is the 4 elements, 4 great elements, the 4 dhatus. So these are among the very important topics. So this dependent origination refers to the dependent arising of all things in the world. Everything in the world did not suddenly come about by itself. Many people think that there's a creator that suddenly created everything in the world. But in the Buddha's teachings, everything in the world arose through conditions. Absolutely everything in the world arose through conditions. And they cease through conditions. And everything is in a flux, changing all the time. And even like this earth, the Buddha talked about world systems expanding and contracting. And the Buddha said that one world system consists of one sun. So in other words, when we look into the sky at night, we see the stars. There are countless stars. And they are a very long distance away. Some of them, even when although we can see them, they are no more there. They have ceased to exist. What is reaching us now is the light from that star so far away, because it has to travel such a long distance. So every world system consists of a sun. In other words, every star that we see out there may have human beings. And the Buddha talked about world systems expanding and contracting. Refers to the galaxy. Every galaxy is a world system. The Buddha talked about the small world system, and then the middling world system, and the great world system, great 1,000-fold, small 1,000-fold world system, then the middling 1,000-fold world system, and then the great 1,000-fold world system. So the small world system consists of, the Buddha says, 1,000 world system, that means 1,000 stars. But that is only a very approximate figure, because in the Indian language they talk about 500, they talk about 1,000, they talk about 84,000. These are only approximate. So when the Buddha talked about world systems expanding and contracting, nowadays scientists see that the galaxy and the stars are moving away from each other. That is the expanding world system. It will keep expanding, the Buddha says, up to a certain limit, and then it will stop, and then it will contract, and then it will contract. It takes a very long time, and then it keeps contracting until the stars come near each other. So now we have one sun in our solar system. After an extremely long time, a second sun will appear close to us. And that happens, all living creatures will die, including human beings. The plants will die. And it keeps shrinking. After a long time, a third sun will come near us. And then the rivers will start to dry up, the streams. And then the fourth sun will come near us, and then the lakes will start to dry up. The ocean gets shallower and shallower. So in this way, slowly, eventually, when the seventh star comes near us, the whole world will burn, the earth will burn, and all these stars will coalesce together, will come together. So when it comes together, it will burn, and the Buddha says, this fire is such a great fire that it will burn right up to the Brahma heavens. And the second jhana heaven is much further away, so it doesn't reach the second jhana heaven. So then that all these stars will come together and form one huge mass. I think this is what nowadays scientists call the black hole. You heard about the black hole? It's a huge mass of stars. But it's called a black hole because you cannot see its light. Because it's such a huge mass, that its magnetic pull is extremely great. Any comet, any asteroid goes near it, gets sucked into it. And it is burning, it is full of heat, full of fire. But because it's such a huge mass, with such a huge magnetic pull, even its light rays, called photons, light particles, try to go out. They go out and they get pulled back. They go out and they get pulled back. So that is why the light rays, you cannot see the light from this huge mass. So they call it a black hole. Then after an extremely long time, what happens? This thing will explode. This is what I think the scientists now call the Big Bang, isn't it? It explodes, and then slowly all the stars will form, and slowly it will evolve, and the world, the earth will reappear. Every world system will reappear. So this has been going on continuously from the beginning of eternity until the end of eternity. It is a very natural process. It's not like some super being up there suddenly created the world. So everything in the world, the Buddha says, is just like that. Due to conditions, slowly things appear. But because the greatest characteristic of the whole universe is one thing, anicca, impermanence. That is the greatest characteristic of the world, impermanence. Everything in the world is impermanent. So that we have to remember. So anatta, sometimes people don't understand the word anatta. We say emptiness, sunyata, kong. Our Chinese interpretation of kong sometimes is a bit out. We think means basically there's nothing. It's not that there's nothing. The meaning of anatta, the meaning of kong, is that there's no permanent entity that exists by itself, that does not change. Everything is changing all the time due to causes and conditions in yen. So everything is changing, appearing and passing away, appearing and passing away. And there is nothing absolutely in the whole universe that stays put. If anything can stay the way it is, that is called atta, self, in the Buddha's teachings. So the Buddha says that because of this, this world is devoid of a core, essence that does not change. So that is anatta. Unfortunately, because Buddhism now is being translated, the Buddha's teachings being translated into different languages, sometimes the translation is out, way out. For example, last time they used to translate jhana as trance. So it gives people the wrong impression. You think, oh, what's the use of jhana? When you abide in the state of jhana, meditative absorption, you are like in a trance state. You don't know anything that's happening around you. That's the absolute opposite of what jhana means. Jhana is a state of clear awareness. Absolutely pure awareness. That's why in the description of the fourth jhana, the Buddha says that the state of the fourth jhana is complete purity of sati. complete purity of sati. So it's because of misconceptions like this due to wrong translation that people have different wrong ideas about things like jhana. So the same with anatta. Sometimes they translate it as no soul. It's not what the Buddha meant. If you say there's no soul, you come up with this concept like in Abhidhamma, that when a being dies and is reborn somewhere else, nothing goes from here to there. That is the Abhidhamma concept. The Abhidhamma concept is consciousness ceases here and it starts somewhere else. Nothing travels from here to there. But in the Buddha's teachings, there is a soul. There is a soul that travels from the deathbed of this being to this new being. That's why the Buddha says, if a person's karma is such that he has to be reborn in the womb, he has to wait for certain conditions. And what are the conditions? Mother and father must come together. And then the mother must be in the right season, fertile. And then the egg is fertilized. And then this, what is called in the suttas, Gandhabba. Sometimes they call it like intermediate being enters, lodges itself in the fertilized egg and becomes a being there. So the concept of this soul, in Chinese we call it Ling Hun, yeah? Ling, how do you call it in Mandarin? Ling Fan, Ling Hun. So there is such a thing that something travels into the womb. This is very clear from the suttas. But it is just a bundle of energy that is changing all the time. Not, for example, like the Christian concept, that a soul means a being that is eternal being. There is a self there. For us, it is just a bundle of energy containing your characteristics, your DNA, your memory, and all these things. So the Buddha's teaching on dependent origination is this, that everything is born due to conditions and it dies or ceases due to the ceasing of these conditions. So there is a general law of dependent origination which the Buddha formulated like this. This being, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. This not being, that comes not to be. With the ceasing of this, that ceases. In other words, certain things come into existence due to certain conditions, and it ceases due to certain conditions. So, the importance of understanding dependent origination can be seen in certain suttas. For example, in Majjhima Nikaya Sutta 28, Sariputta, remember this Arahant Sariputta quoted the Buddha, and he said, he who sees dependent origination sees the Dhamma. He who sees the Dhamma sees dependent origination. So, if we understand the Dhamma, we understand dependent origination. And if we understand dependent origination, we understand the Dhamma. Another sutta, Samyutta Nikaya 12.27, the Buddha said, now in as much monks as the Aryan disciple knows dependent origination, knows the arising of dependent origination, knows the ceasing of dependent origination, knows the way going to the ceasing of dependent origination. He is what we call the Aryan disciple, who has won the view, who has won insight, who has arrived at this good Dhamma, who sees this good Dhamma, who possesses the knowledge of the trained man, who possesses the wisdom of the trained man, who has entered the stream of the Dhamma, who has the Aryan insight of revulsion, who stands knocking at the door of the deathless. So here the Buddha says, if you understand dependent origination, you have entered the stream of the Dhamma. In other words, you have attained stream entry. That's why it is important to understand dependent origination. Now in the Samyutta Nikaya 12.10, the Buddha said that when he was still a bodhisattva before enlightenment, he contemplated the cause of suffering and he understood dependent origination to a certain extent. For example, the Buddha contemplated why is there suffering in the world? So from contemplating this, he understood there is suffering in this world because all beings must age. And when we age, we become sick. And after some time, we must die. All beings must go through this process. There is not a single being you can find that does not die. Because in the Buddha's teachings, all beings must have a body. There is no being without a body in the Buddha's teachings. In the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha says, there is no coming and going of consciousness without the other aggregates, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. So whenever you have consciousness, consciousness must lodge itself in a body. So when consciousness comes together with the body, that body must age, and it must sicken, and it must die. So that's how he understood about suffering. And then he asked himself again, but why is it that beings must become old, sicken, and die? Then he understood, it's because we are born into this world. When we are born into this world, that is the nature of the world, that everyone must go through this process. If there was no birth, we would not have to become old, sicken, and die. And then he asked himself again, why is there birth? Then he contemplated, it's because of attachment, upadana. Because of attachment, then you have birth. So in this way, he contemplated backwards this link of 12 links of dependent origination, and he understood that finally all this suffering, the ultimate cause of suffering is ignorance. So now I will explain these 12 links of dependent origination. When we talk about dependent origination, we can talk about dependent origination of many things. But in the Buddha's teachings, the most important thing we want to understand is suffering and how suffering arises and how suffering can cease. The Buddha said, ultimately, he teaches only one thing. He teaches only suffering and the ending of suffering. All else is not important. The Buddha says that he knows a lot of things, but he does not want to talk about them because it is not beneficial to us. Our life is so short, and nowadays a lot of people want to know this, want to know that. So we go into the internet, the world of knowledge. You want to find out about this, you want to find out about that. That is quite good because it can help you in certain ways. But ultimately, if you don't answer the question of why you are existing in this world now, who made you, or what made you, and where are you going after this? If you don't ask all these questions and find out the answers, by the time in a few more years, when death comes knocking on your door, you'll be totally frightened and confused. The Buddha says that most people, when we are about to die, we are very afraid for various reasons. One is we have bad karma. Another one, we don't have enough blessings. Another one, we don't understand the Dhamma. So because we don't understand the Dhamma, we don't know what life is all about. we don't know where we are going after death. Or if you know and you are going to a woeful plane of existence, then you are even more frightened. So it is important to understand all these questions. These are ultimately the most important questions in life. But only people with deep wisdom will think, will stop and think. Why am I struggling so hard to make money? Why am I struggling so hard to go through life? What is life all about? Very few people actually will stop and think about these basic questions. Those who think about it are those who are spiritually mature, have gone through this cycle of births and deaths a long time. We have evolved to the stage where we are mature enough to stop and ask, why am I going around this cycle of birth and death? Doing the same things again and again, lifetime after lifetime. When we have suffered enough, then slowly we will try to look for the truth about life. So now I will explain these 12 links. The first link, independent origination, is ignorance. Ignorance is the first cause, you can say, of suffering. So ignorance in the suttas, before I go into that, firstly I like to say the sources for the understanding of dependent origination. The main source is from the Samyutta Nikaya. I mentioned yesterday that Samyutta Nikaya is the most important Nikaya in my view, because it deals with all the deep topics of the Buddha's teachings. And there is one chapter called the Nidana Samyutta, the 12th chapter of Samyutta Nikaya. There are many suttas dealing with dependent origination. Nidana is conditions or conditional causation. It has the same meaning as paticca samuppada. Paticca samuppada means dependent arising, dependent origination of all things in existence. So that is the main source for understanding the Buddha's words on dependent origination. Then besides that, you have, for example, the Mahanidana Sutta in the Digha Nikaya. It's one of the long discourses where the Buddha talked about dependent origination. But since it's only one sutta, you can only get to know about dependent origination, very limited knowledge. Just like some people, they don't investigate the suttas. They think if you want to understand sati or satipatthana, you only need to study the Mahasatipatthana Sutta or the Satipatthana Sutta and you will understand everything about Satipatthana. Absolutely untrue. That is just one sutta, so it only can give you a little knowledge about sati. If you want to understand about sati or satipatthana, you have to study the chapter on satipatthana in the Samyutta Nikaya, which has many suttas explaining satipatthana from various angles. Whenever you read one sutta, you will understand the Buddha's words from one angle. Just understanding from one angle is not enough. So you have to understanding from different angles. Just like you see an object, you see from one direction, you only can understand it in that direction. You see it from different directions, then you get an overall picture which is complete. So in the same way, when we want to understand Satipatthana, we have to study the Satipatthana chapter of the Samyutta Nikaya, just as we have to study the Nidana Samyutta, the chapter, if we want to understand dependent origination. So in the Nidana chapter of the Samyutta Nikaya, it is explained that avidya, ignorance, means ignorance of the Four Noble Truths. ignorance of suffering, ignorance of how suffering originates, ignorance of how suffering ceases, and ignorance of the path going to the ceasing of suffering. In other words, the Four Noble Truths. So that's the meaning of avijja. So because of ignorance of the Dhamma, ordinary worldlings, due to this ignorance, then second link, ignorance causes sankhara. When we chant the 12 links of dependent origination, if you all come here to do chanting, I'm sure you follow the Thai monks, you know this chant. It goes like this, avijja paccaya sankhara, sankhara paccaya vijnanang, vijnana paccaya nama rupang, nama rupa paccaya salayatanang, salayatana paccaya paso, pasa paccaya vedana, vedana paccaya tanha, etc. So, avijja causes, conditions, the arising of sankhara. This sankhara is one of two links of these 12 links of dependent origination, which is hard to understand. And many monks interpret it in the standard way that has been explained in the commentaries, in the Abhidhamma, in the traditional teaching of Theravada. And unfortunately, I don't agree wholesale with it. This word sankhara, you can translate it generally as intention or volition. Because, like for example, in the 5 khandhas, the 5 aggregates of attachment, you also have sankhara there. And sankhara there means volition or intention. Now, intention or volition in the Buddha's teachings is connected with karma, action or intentional action. The Buddha says cetana. Cetana is karma. Cetana is intention or you can say volition, you can say purposely doing something with a purpose. So this word cetana is karma. Now this word sankhara is quite close to it. It is generally translated as intention or volition. Now, because there's a lot of confusion over this word, the general traditional interpretation, translation of this word sankhara is formations. Sometimes they call it mental formations, sometimes they call it volitional formations. This word has been translated in various ways, but I believe the latest translation by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, who is a very much respected translator of the suttas, he translates it as volitional formations. So he recognizes that this word sankhara has much to do with volition or intention. Now the traditional interpretation of this word sankhara is karma. Karma, the working of karma. In other words, intentional action through the body, intentional action through speech, and intentional action through the mind. So my interpretation of this word sankhara is intention, but directed slightly, not general karma, but intention to do with the will to live. To do with the will to live. Now, the sankhara, this word, is defined in the suttas as 3 types of sankhara. Kaya sankhara, which is bodily intention, and vachi sankhara, which is verbal intention, and chitta sankhara, which is mental intention. So this is the three sets of sankhara found in dependent origination. When we study the suttas in the Nikayas and we compare with other suttas, we find that there actually appears two sets of sankharas in the suttas, in the Nikayas. The other set of sankhara found in the suttas is almost the same except the last part. It is also kaya sankhara, which is bodily intention or volition. Vachi sankhara, which is verbal intention. These two are the same. But the third one, instead of chitta sankhara, the third one is mano sankhara. Mano sankhara. Mano has got to do with thinking. So this second set of sankharas in the suttas, when we look through the suttas, we find it's always got to do with the creating of karma, general creation of karma. Let me see. For example, in the suttas, the Buddha says, in Sangyutta Nikaya 12.25, the Buddha said, with ignorance as condition, either by oneself, ananda, one wills bodily intentions, kaya sankarang abhisankaroti, following which arises internally pleasure and pain. Or because of others, one wills bodily intentions, following which arises internally pleasure and pain. And similarly with the verbal and mental intentions. So here, when it concerns the second set of sankharas, you see very clearly that person wills bodily, verbal and mental intentions which gives rise to pleasure and pain. In other words, it is general karma, general intentional action. Also in Majjhima Nikaya 57, the Buddha said, and what punya is dark action with dark result. Here someone generates an afflictive bodily sankhara, an afflictive verbal sankhara, an afflictive mental sankhara. So here also refers to the second set of sankharas, in other words, kaya sankhara, vachi sankhara and mano sankhara. But when we refer to the first set of sankharas in the suttas, which is connected with dependent origination, which is kaya sankhara, vachi sankhara and chitta sankhara, the explanation of this first set is completely different. This first set of sankharas, we find that they have to do with something else. For example, in Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 44, it is stated, when a monk is attaining the cessation of feeling and perception, first the speech sankhara ceases, then the body sankhara, then the mental sankhara. When a monk is emerging from the attainment of cessation of feeling and perception, first the mental sankhara arises, then the body sankhara, then the speech sankhara. This first set of sankharas, the explanation given is that kaya sankhara, kaya sankhara refers to breathing. In the Majjhima Nikaya Sutta 44, this Arahant Dhammadina was explaining these three sankharas to the layman Visakha. He said, indeed, friend Visakha, In and out breaths are body sankhara, kaya sankhara. Initial and sustained thoughts, that means vitaka and vichara, are speech sankhara, vachi sankhara. Feeling and perception are chitta sankhara, mental sankhara. Friend visakha, in and out breaths are bodily. These states are bound up with the body. That is why in-breaths and out-breaths are called body sankhara. First one applies initial thought and sustained thought, and subsequently one breaks out into speech. That is why initial and sustained thoughts are speech sankhara. Perception and feelings are mental. These states are bound up with the mind. That is why perception and feeling are mental sankhara, chitta sankhara. So here you see, this first set of sankharas that have to do with dependent origination are quite different from the first one, from the second one. Just now I read the second one has to do with general karma, but this one is slightly different. So my interpretation of this sankhara independent origination is that although it may include general karma, but the more important aspect of it is to do with the will to live. Because every living being, we have a great desire to live. This desire to live is so strong that there's nothing more important to any living being in the world. Yeah. For example, if you take another person's wealth away, you take all his wealth, how many billion you take away? At the end of his life, he might still forgive you because he knows when he's dying, he cannot even take 1 cent with him. Yeah, there's nothing he can take with him when he goes off for rebirth. But if you take his life, he will not be happy with that. You probably think, even if I come back as a ghost, I will take revenge. Yeah. So life is so important. There is no living being who will exchange his life for anything in the world. Even suppose I want to buy your life, I give you all the wealth in the world. Do you want it? Nobody wants it. So we have a natural tendency to live. This will to live is extremely strong. So I will explain why these sankharas have to do with the will to live. First, the body sankhara. You know, this body sankhara, breathing, in breath and out breath, is programmed into our mind. So because it's been programmed into our mind, this will to live is like this breathing is like automatic. We breathe in and out now. We don't notice that we actually intentionally breathe in and out because it's been programmed into our mind. But if I were to stop your breathing, if I were to close your nose and close your mouth, what happens? You will struggle very hard to breathe. So this breathing, you want the body to live. That's why you want to breathe. As long as you breathe, your bodily, your body will continue to survive. So it's because you want to live. That's why you continue to breathe. So kaya sankhara, your breathing has very much to do with your will to live. If a person does not want to live anymore, then he will be willing to stop breathing. For example, on your deathbed. And then vachi sankhara is said to be thinking, vitaka and vichara, initial thought and sustained thought. This thinking is connected with speech, because before you can break out into speech, you must formulate the ideas in your mind. You must think first. You think, then only you can break out into speech. So because we want to live, we want to function through the body, the speech and the mind. If you live, you must function through these three karmas, actions. So, because you want to continue speaking, you want to continue thinking. So when you think, then only you can break out into speech. And then the mental intention, citta sankhara, is perception and feeling. If you have perception and feeling, then consciousness starts to work, because perception and feeling always comes together with consciousness, because perception and feeling is another aspect of consciousness, it's a type of consciousness. So when you have perception and feeling, then your mind works. There is a state called Nirodha Samapatti, where some arahants can attain. And when they attain the state of Nirodha Samapatti, it is called the cessation of perception and feeling. So when they experience cessation of perception and feeling, consciousness also stops. So they go into a state where the sixth consciousness stops. But this can only last for 7 days, after which they must come out of it. So you can see here, because you want to live, you want your three, your three aspects of life to work. You want your body to survive, you want to continue speaking, you want to continue thinking. That's why these three, kaya, body, intention, verbal intention, and mental intention must work. So that's why I believe that these three sankharas have to do more with the will to live than with general karma. Although you can say that is also connected with the doing of karma. But first you must have the intention to live first. If you don't live, how can you do karma? Yes or not? So the intention to live is more important. Now this sankhara will condition the next link, which is consciousness. So from here, I'll make you see why this sankhara has more to do with the will to live. Because consciousness, a lot of people think that consciousness is a stream of unending consciousness. Most people think because our consciousness seems to be unbroken, our consciousness seems to be running all the time, but it's not true at all. In the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha says consciousness is dependently arisen. The 6 types of consciousness that we have, eye consciousness, ear consciousness or hearing consciousness, nose consciousness or smelling consciousness, tongue consciousness or tasting consciousness, body consciousness or touch or tactile consciousness, and mental consciousness or thinking consciousness. These 6 consciousness these 6 consciousness are running not in an unending stream, but they arise one after another. So the Buddha says that dependent on the eye and forms outside, seeing consciousness arises. So this seeing consciousness arises and passes away very fast. So our consciousness arises and passes away, arises and passes away. It is arising and passing away so fast that we think it is an unending stream of consciousness, but it is not so. And when consciousness arises and passes away, what is it that makes the next consciousness arise? That's why here I believe it has to do with the will to live. Because of your will to live, because the will to live is so strong, when consciousness ceases, it comes up again, arises again. It's like a flame dies down, and due to some force, it arises again. For example, the wind, when the flame is dying out, and a wind comes, and then it comes back to life again. The flame arises again. So this consciousness arises and passes away because of this will to live. If there were not the will to live, when consciousness ceases, it will not arise again. Will not arise again. So, but in the traditional interpretation of dependent origination, they talk about consciousness ceasing at death. Consciousness ceasing and death and arising again. But I don't think we need to consider consciousness ceasing at death, because every moment our consciousness is ceasing. In other words, we are dying every moment. I believe there's one saint who saw this in his meditation, because his mind has become so, I think it was a Christian saint, it becomes so still that he says he dies every moment, because consciousness ceases every moment. So you can see here, it is the will to live that creates the spark of consciousness. Every time consciousness dies away, it arises again. So now, in the Buddha's teachings, consciousness, whenever consciousness arises or ceases, it must come together with nama rupa. Nama rupa, sometimes people translate it as body and mind, mind and body, but it is not quite correct. Body and mind in the Buddha's teachings is the 5 khandhas. The 5 khandhas, the body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. So the last 4, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness is considered the mental, the mind. But here, nama rupa is not body and mind. Nama rupa and vijnana. Nama rupa you can translate as mentality and materiality. In the suttas, the Buddha says, always arises with consciousness, vijnana. They are like Siamese twins. Siamese twins are joined at the head, joined at the body. You cannot separate them. So in the same way, nama rupa and vijnana, the Buddha says they arise together and they cease together. They must always arise together and cease together. Now consciousness, when consciousness arises, you must be conscious of something. Yeah, that something that you are conscious of is nama rupa. So in other words, nama rupa is the object of consciousness. Okay. So when the object of consciousness, there are 2 aspects. One is the mental object, is a mental part, and the other one is the material part. Now in the suttas, in the on dependent origination, the Buddha says that nama refers to contact, feeling, perception, consideration and volition. Contact, feeling, perception, consideration and volition. You notice here, out of these 5 things, it does not mention consciousness. So because it is devoid of consciousness, it cannot be mind. But when you combine it with the consciousness, then only there is this mind. And then the 4 great elements is rupa. Rupa is the physical aspect of phenomena, because nama rupa is being the object of consciousness. The English word for it is phenomena. Phenomena is what we are conscious of. So nama rupa is mentality and materiality, the object of consciousness. But if you look carefully into this physical part, the rupa consists of 4 elements, earth, water, fire, wind. Now this earth, water, fire, wind is not really earth, water, fire, wind. Earth refers to the hardness element. Whatever is hard, we refer to it as earth. For example, this wood, this chair is hard. When I touch it, it is hard. So that is the earth element. Earth, fire. Fire is the heat element. All of us have the heat element in us. So we have the fire element in us. We also have the earth element, the hardness aspect of us. Earth, water, fire, earth, water. Water is the cohesion property. The liquids, liquids have the characteristic of cohering things together. For example, I have this physical shape, this body, because of the water element in me. If I were to dehydrate myself, take away all the water from my body, and my body will turn into powder. When my body turns into powder, it will crumble. It will crumble. So it is because of the water element in my body. That's why I have a certain physical shape. Earth, water, fire, wind. Wind is the motion aspect, because there is, I call it wind in my body. So the gases move in my body, the blood moves in my body, the chi moves in my body. That is the wind element. Now, you notice carefully, all these four things, earth, water, fire, wind, they are perceptions, The heartless element is a perception. The form, shape also is a perception. The heat element is also a perception. The wind or motion element is also a perception. In other words, even this physical world is just your perception of it, It is not something out of your perception, out of your mind. In other words, even the mental and the physical part of the world, everything is mind-made. So, for example, if your karma is so bad that you see yourself in hell and you are burned by the fires of hell, you'll be crying. But suppose one day I become an arahant and I come and visit you in hell. My mind is different from yours. So I go down to hell. I don't perceive the heat like you do. I don't suffer like you do. Because my mind has a different perception from your mind. So that's why mind is extremely important. Your mind determines your world. Your mind determines your perception. A pure mind is a happy mind. An impure mind, a disturbed mind, is a mind full of suffering. That's why in the Buddha's teachings, mind is extremely important, because your mind creates your world. So once you have this consciousness and mentality, materiality, that brings you to the next link, which is the six sense basis, salayatana. Because your consciousness must function through the six sense organs, through the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. So these are the six internal sense bases. And the six external sense bases are the objects of these six internal sense bases, namely forms for the eye to see, sounds for the ear to hear, odors for the nose to smell, touch for the body to feel, and thoughts for the mind to think. So this six sense bases come to existence when you have consciousness and mentality and materiality. They all come together, the six sense bases. So once you have the six sense bases and you have the internal sense bases and the external sense objects, then it brings you to the next link, which is contact. When the six sense objects impinge on your six sense organs, you have contact. For example, form comes before your eyes, and you pay attention then there is contact lah. And eye consciousness arises lah, and you say you see lah. So similarly, when a sound comes to your ear, you have a good ear, and there is contact, and you pay attention, then you hear lah. So it is contact that of these six sense objects impinging on your six sense bases lah. So once you have contact, then the next link is feeling arises lah. Once you have contact of the six sense bases, then feeling is the first thing to arise lah. So feeling arising, there are three types, basically three types of feeling at your six sense doors lah. And these three are pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and neutral feeling lah. For example, if you see a beautiful form, you have a pleasant feeling arising lah. If you see an ugly, frightening form, then unpleasant feeling arises. And then if it's neither attractive nor unattractive, then neutral feeling arises. So this feeling arising, if it is pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling, you are moved by it. If it is neutral feeling, sometimes you don't even observe it. You tend to not to notice it. But if it's pleasant or unpleasant feeling arising, you notice it very clearly. So when a pleasant feeling arises, we tend to enjoy it. Once you enjoy it, you want to enjoy it again. So what happens? Craving arises. There is craving for it. For example, when we were young, we never tasted ice cream, and our parents gave us ice cream to eat. After tasting ice cream, this child liked that flavor, and then he craves for it. He wants some more. So craving arises when there is pleasant feeling. So when there is craving, then because of craving for it, you attach to it. You want to grasp it. You want to cling to it. So this is the natural consequence of craving for something. So this craving is generally craving for the six sense objects, for beautiful forms, for nice sounds, for fragrant odors, for pleasant taste, for nice touch, and for nice thoughts. So craving gives rise to attachment, and attachment upadana gives rise to bhava. This bhava is the second link, independent origination. Is very hard to understand. For many years I could not understand it really. So this bhava is said to be existence or being. How is it that attachment gives rise to being or existence? This existence or being is explained in the suttas as being in the sensual desire realm or desire realm existence, form realm existence, and formless realm existence. Every world system, the Buddha says, can be divided into three realms. The lowest is the sensual desire realm, where sensual desire or sensual lust dominates all beings. So because of sensual desire, you have male and female. And then if you cultivate jhana, person having attained jhana can be reborn in the form realm. This form realm consists of very high heavens. The lowest is the first jhana plane, where the Brahma, Devas live. And then the second jhana heavens, then the third jhana, and the fourth jhana heavens. And these beings, they abide in happiness and bliss because of the state of their mind. And because the state of the mind is is in the state of jhana, they don't need to enjoy sensual desire. They enjoy a different type of bliss. So because they don't need to enjoy sensual desire, they have no sensual desire, so there is no male and female beings there. Everyone is unisex. And their bodies consist of pure light. They are like brighter than the sun. Even the lowest, the first jhana heavens, the Brahma, Devas, their brightness exceeds the sun much, much more. In the suttas, the Buddha says the very lowest of them, their light can shine to 1,000 world systems, 1,000 worlds. In others, 1,000 stars, their light can go to. And the highest of them, their light can pervade 100,000 stars. So far away, their light so powerful. These are the three realms in the bhava. When you talk about bhava, this existence, you refer to these three types of existence or three types of beings. So now, how is it that clinging or attachment gives rise to being? It is like that. It is like this. When we crave for something and we cling to something, that I arises, that self arises. I want this, I must have this, I cannot live without this. So that I arises when you enjoy something. When you enjoy something, you feel I am enjoying it. This perception, I exist, I am, arises when you have craving and clinging or attachment. So this bhava is this perception that I exist and I am. So once this self comes into being, this being arises. This being arises. That's why this being comes into existence. Once this being comes into existence, then it perceives that it is born into the world. So bhava conditions birth. So once you have a self, then you see that you are born into the world. It's not just like a plant. A plant also has consciousness, but because a plant, a tree, does not have the perception I exist or I am, when a tree grows up, it does not perceive, the tree does not perceive that I am born into the world. But because we have an I, a self, we perceive birth. We perceive the birth of this physical body. You are born into the human body, or you are born into a deva body, or you are born into a ghost body. So this, because of this clinging, that I arises and you see yourself born into the world. So bhava, existence or being, conditions birth. And once you have birth into the world, then the natural consequence is aging, sickening and dying. And all the mass of suffering arises because you are born into this world. So that is the explanation of the 12 links of dependent origination. So you find many books talk about dependent origination, but the two hardest links to understand, to get it correct, is sankhara, volition or intention, and bhava, existence or being. So you can see here that it is because of craving and clinging that I strengthens itself. So that is why you can see the holy path, why a person to walk the holy path and get out of samsara, he must cut off sensual enjoyment. He must give up sensual pleasures in the world. He must renounce sensual pleasures in the world. Because as long as you enjoy sensual pleasures in the world, it fortifies, it strengthens that perception, I exist, I am. So when you give up that craving and that clinging, then slowly that I am or I exist starts to weaken. So that is why renunciation is important. And also the fact that where does craving and clinging come from? Comes from feeling, pleasant feeling. When you have pleasant feeling, then that craving arises. So you give up pleasant feeling. But in this world, everybody is chasing after pleasant feeling, isn't it? If you know how to market something that gives people pleasant feeling, you will sell. If you market something that does not give people pleasant feeling, nobody wants to buy. Yeah. So you provide good shows for people to see. People enjoy. People want. You provide good music, rock band and all that. People want. You want good. You provide good taste, nice taste. People want to eat, especially Chinese. Very fond of good taste. So from here you can see. So when we understand the Dhamma, we understand the Four Noble Truths, then we know that ultimately this world is not satisfactory. However much we enjoy, we can never be contented. We cannot satisfy our sensual desires. It's never enough. You satisfy your sensual desires for a short while, and then tomorrow you want it again. Our stomach is like an endless pit. You fill yourself with good food. After several hours, you're hungry again. Need to eat again. You enjoy your sensual desires, and then you tire yourself out. After that, when your energy comes back, the sensual desires come back again. So life for most people is just trying to satisfy our sensual desires. So because we want to satisfy our sensual desires, we struggle to make more money. You make more money, then you have more power to spend. You have more spending power. You have more things to enjoy. So we chase after all these sensual desires in the world, but ultimately we are never satisfied. When you are young, you want a good education. After you get a good education, you want to have a good job. After you have a good job, you want to have a good spouse. After you have a good spouse, you want beautiful and cute children. After you have cute children, and they grow up, you want to have grandchildren. You want to make your million, or if possible, your billion. If you make your billion at the end of about 70 years, your life, your shelf life has expired. So when your shelf life expires at the end of 70 over years, and you are coming to the end of life, and suddenly when you realize that you have cancer or you're about to die, then you are confused. What is life all about? All the things I wanted in the world, I got. But now I can't cling on to them. I must go. I must leave every single one. I must leave every part of my property. I cannot even bring 1 cent with me. So you are confused. Or you should have, then you start asking questions. But it's too late. You should have asked all these questions about life when you were younger, when you had the strength to practice a spiritual path. So if you start asking and you find out the answers and you understand the Four Noble Truths, then because of that, you slowly you let go. Slowly you let go, and then letting go you can only do if you understand the Dhamma, from listening to the Dhamma, from studying the Buddha's words, and meditating. If you don't meditate to strengthen your mind, there are a lot of things we know we should do. There are a lot of things we know we should not do, but we are unable to do what we should do. We are unable to stop doing what we should not do. Why? Like the English saying goes, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Yeah. A lot of us, we have illicit relations. A lot of lay people have illicit relations, commit adultery. It's not that they don't know that it's wrong. They know, but the flesh is weak. A lot of things we know that we should do, but we can't find the time to do because we don't see that it is important enough. We have a lot of desires in the world. There's so many things we want to achieve in this world. But life is limited. Our energy is limited. Our time is limited. So you have to see what is your priority. You must have the foresight to see how many years you have left in life. You go by statistics. At the age of 70-something, you are going to pass away. You have to face up to that fact. See how many more years you have. And make the best use of it according to your priority. So I will stop here and we can discuss anything you'd like to discuss.
Any questions? Let it go for something. I have a question. I read some books because of Origination from conscious understanding the dependent of origination backwards from suffering to craving and finally to consciousness and then it goes on and gives consciousness again. After listening to your talk, I feel like I'm understanding which I like to seek a clarification why it is that way. It is unconsciousness, Arupa, and then consciousness. And this is what I think it is and for the thinking. I think it's because of our will to live. Given consciousness is always arising and ceasing one after another. Is it because of this that explains why consciousness is Arupa and Arupa is consciousness?
I think what you have said refers to the traditional interpretation of dependent origination, which concerns 3 lifetimes. They talk about ignorance in the previous life causes you to create karma in your previous life. Sankhara they translate as karma. So because of creating karma in your previous life, they say that your consciousness is born into this world, this present lifetime. And this consciousness comes with nama rupa, and which conditions the 6 sense bases, which conditions feeling, which conditions craving and attachment. And they say because of attachment that you come into existence, that the world is created and you are born. In other words, this is born into in the future lifetime. So they talk about 3 lifetimes. The previous lifetime, conditioning consciousness in this lifetime, and the following links will condition the consciousness in the future lifetime. But if you follow what I have explained just now, we are talking about ignorance in this lifetime, and because of ignorance, you have the intention to live moment to moment. Every moment we are clinging to life. And because we are clinging to life every moment, that is why it conditions the arising of consciousness moment to moment in this very lifetime. So the consciousness, here I'm talking about this consciousness changing every moment in the present lifetime. So the first few links are all connected with this present lifetime, and that gives rise to the following links until you get birth, which is in the future lifetime. So here I am talking more of a two lifetime interpretation, present lifetime and future lifetime. And this agrees with the Mahanidana Sutta in the Digha Nikaya, because in the Mahanidana Sutta, I think it talks about, instead of 12 links of dependent origination, it talks about 10 links. It does not have to do with ignorance and sankhara. So it does not have to do with ignorance and sankhara, which the traditional interpretation says is connected with the previous lifetime. So it is talking about the present lifetime and the future lifetime. So the traditional interpretation, according to the commentaries and the Abhidhamma, is 3 lifetimes. But recently, the last few years, we have monks, famous monks, talking about only one lifetime, the present lifetime. They are talking about moment to moment. People like Achan Buddhadasa, who has passed away. Venerable, the English monk Nyana Moli, and also Achan Payutto, a famous monk in Thailand. They are talking about only present lifetime, moment to moment, because they say, the Buddha says, the Dhamma can be seen in this very lifetime, Sanditiko. Here and now, you can see the Dhamma. So they say because of that, they say that it is, you can interpret it as this moment to moment. Okay. If you like, you can discuss any other topic out of dependent origination. Unless a person is an arahant, that person still has that ego, the self, and this ego is what causes us to have this greed, hatred, and delusion, and turn in the round of samsara. So if you don't understand the Dhamma and you are not an Arya, that means you are an ordinary worldling, a Putujana. And if you are an ordinary Putujana, you will be reborn again and again. And depending on whether your mind, the state of your mind, that will condition your rebirth. So even though you are not a Buddhist, you will definitely be reborn again and again. It's just that every time you come, you have forgotten who you were. So if a person does good deeds like charity and not harming others, then that person will get a good rebirth. In the suttas, the Buddha says that most beings after death will be reborn into the 3 woeful planes of the ghost realm, animal realm, and hell realm. And then the Buddha mentioned that these two things, keeping the precepts, that means not harming others, and charity or generosity is very important to determine your rebirth. The Buddha says that if a person does very little dana and sila, generosity and keeping of the precepts, then that person is likely to be reborn as a human being in the next lifetime, but with very little blessings. With very little blessings. In other words, that person might be born into a very poor circumstances, and will not be handsome or beautiful, and may even have some physical defects. And then the Buddha says, if a person does these two things, charity and the keeping of the precepts, to a medium degree, then it can be expected that the person will have a human rebirth with much blessings, with good luck, words born into wealthy circumstances, and looking beautiful or handsome and healthy, and have long life, etc. On the other hand, the Buddha says, if a person does charity and keeps the precepts to a high degree, it is to be expected that that person will be reborn in the heavenly realm. So you see, like people like Bill Gates, he has a very good heart. There's a lot of charity and does not harm others, always trying to help others. Such a person can be expected to be reborn in the heavenly realm. And then after that, when he comes back as a human being, again he'll have very good karma, a lot of blessings. Yes, in the Buddha's teachings, that there is time has no beginning and time has no end. Because you must understand, this world is created by mind. It's like a state of altered consciousness. All the realms of existence are states of altered consciousness. So, that being the case, the Buddha says that since there is no beginning of time and no end of time, so this dependent origination has been going on for eternity. In Buddhism, when we talk about the Creator God, we don't think of a being up there that determines your fate. Because if you talk about a being up there that determines your fate, then you will naturally ask who created that being. Okay? So in the Buddha's teachings, God is not a being, but like Mother Nature, something like Mother Nature, something that a kind of force that controls the world, that governs the working of the world. So this force that governs the working of the world is not a personal being. It's not a spiritual being, but just a natural force. So in Buddhism, we don't have to fear God. We have to understand God. God, these natural laws, this nature, works in a certain way. So you have to understand how the world works. So when you understand how the world works, then you conform with the laws of the world. Then you don't suffer so much. It's just like you want to drive on the highway. You must understand the highway code. You cannot drive as you like. One moment on the left lane, sometimes on the right lane. And when you see a red traffic light, you cut through. You are breaking all the laws, and you get into trouble. So in the same way, there are certain laws in this world that the world works in a certain way. If you understand, then you won't. So the Buddha's teachings is for us to understand the working of the world and live in a skillful way. Nowadays, we know that everything we do, we have to do it smart. You have to eat smart. You have to work smart, you have to everything do in a smart way. If you don't eat smart, you eat all the wrong things, and you end up with cancer, you end up with certain disease. And then if you know how to live smart, you know you must eat nutritious food rather than just tasty food, tasty junk food. So you also know that you have to rest enough. You have to not to get too much stress and all that, so that you have a longer life, healthy life. Quality of life is better. Yeah. To end this chain of dependent origination of suffering, the most important is to understand the Dhamma, Buddha's Dhamma. And when you either study the suttas in the early Nikayas or you listen to Dhamma talks based on the suttas, then slowly you understand. And when you understand, you will know what to do. But two things are very important if you want to practice the path out of suffering. One is to really understand the Buddha's words. The second one is to meditate, to get some strength of mind. If you have strength of mind, then you will see clearly what you should do and what you should not do. And after you see clearly, then you have the strength of mind to act on it. If you don't have the strength of mind, you may know that you should not commit adultery, but you still go ahead and commit adultery. If you things like this. So the two main practices is listening to the Dhamma, which are based on the original teachings of the Buddha, and meditating to attain a focused mind, strength of mind. And the best time to meditate is early morning when you get up. Get up a bit earlier so that you have a bit of time to meditate. And if you can get a good meditation early in the morning, it will help you to withstand the stress in your working life for the rest of the day. You'll be able to withstand better. If you have a very scattered mind, you go to office and then you're a bit blur. You do the wrong things, your boss will be upset with you and you scold you, and when you get scolding, you can't take it because your mind is all not solid, it's not strong, easily shaken by the eight winds. So these two things are the main practice. So when you understand the Dhamma, then slowly you know that the things that you enjoy in this world are the very same things that give you suffering. The Buddha says Mara, Satan, is trying to fish for us, trying to catch us, and he has set out 6 baits, and these baits have hooks. If you like a naive fish that will easily bite the bait, then you get hooked. And what are these 6 baits? Beautiful forms for you to see, nice sounds for you to hear, nice odors for you to smell, a nice taste for your tongue, and nice touch, like the touch of the opposite sex, and then nice thoughts. Nowadays people like to enjoy all these computer games and all these things just to get mental stimulation. So these are all the 6 hooks of Mara, Satan, the Buddha says. So you understand the Dhamma. It's not that the Buddha says you should not enjoy the things in the world. The Buddha says for lay people, you should achieve to get wealth in a lawful way, in a proper way, without harming others lah. In other words, earn your wealth through right livelihood lah, without harming others lah. And then when you have wealth, you can enjoy your wealth lah. Only thing, if you understand the Dhamma, then even when you enjoy yourself, you don't overindulge yourself. Because if you overindulge yourself, then suffering can come. You must always remember the Buddha's teachings that life is impermanent. Whenever we enjoy something, we want to cling to it. But because life is impermanent, sometimes relationships can grow cold. Sometimes those that you love must separate from you. And either through death or through their going overseas and all that. So all these can be causes of suffering. But when you understand the Dhamma, that everything is impermanent, that we came into this world empty-handed, and we are going to leave this world empty-handed. There is not a single thing in this world that belongs to us. Although we like to say, this is my husband, this is my wife, this is my child. Absolutely nothing in the world belongs to you. Due to causes and conditions, we come together. And because of causes and conditions, we will separate. So if you have good karma, you have more things to enjoy in this world. But all that is on loan to you only. Everything in the world is on loan to you. Just for you to enjoy for a while. And then you'll be taken away from you. Everything will be taken away from you. So if you remember that nothing in the world really belongs to you, that we come together because of causes and conditions, we separate, then you don't be too attached. And if you are not too attached, then you won't suffer. During the Buddha's time, there was a lay woman disciple who was the wife of a general. And she practiced until it seems she became an anagamin or something, third fruit Arya. And then because the husband was a general, in war sometimes he has to kill and all this thing, And in the court there's a lot of intrigue and counter intrigue. So people sort of told some lies to the king that he was plotting to overthrow the king and all that. And the king believed that, and the king caught him and all his sons and chopped off their head, beheaded them. So this general and all his sons were killed. But when his wife heard the news, she was not upset because she was an anagami. She understood that all things are due to conditions. It's because of his karma, maybe because as a general he had killed so many people that one day he has to die for it. And even though it is her own husband, she said she was not upset by it. The sons died also, she was not upset by it, because she knows nothing in the world belongs to her. So if we understand the Dhamma, then we don't suffer so much. Have you all seen funerals? We as monks, sometimes we are asked to go because somebody has passed away. When they take out the coffin, you see how the family cries. There's nothing more suffering, more sorrowful than someone you love is going to go away from you. They're not going for a holiday, it's going to leave you forever and ever. And then when your beloved one goes away, you also realize that you are growing old. One day you will also have to go. So all this strikes that person. So that person, you can see on the funeral day, so much suffering. Sometimes we as monks, we see also, sometimes one tear also comes down our eyes. So it is because of this strong attachment. So after I became after I studied the Dhamma, when my father passed away, I came back to the house. Everybody was crying. I was the only one who was not crying.
anyone with more questions? Because understand something like what we giving us and talk only tomorrow at Buddhist library. What are you doing for something?
Say again.
Where are you doing the foundation of the
why I switched from Mahayana to Theravada? Because I had a very bad experience with my teacher. Very bad experience with my teacher. And I started to have some doubt about Mahayana teachings. Because I came to realize that my teacher was quite the opposite of what I thought he was. So because I came to doubt, so I went to Thailand to investigate. And when I was in Thailand, I was asked to ordain because they said if I'm a Mahayana monk wearing Theravada robes, I could be caught for impersonating a monk. So I reordained in Thailand. And after I reordained, I spent my first Vasa, rains retreat, in Wat Pa Nanachat, which is the International Forest Monastery under Ajahn Chah. Almost all the monks there are Western monks. So they have a very good library. So when I studied the suttas there, then I realized there's a lot of contradictions between Theravada and Mahayana. And then when I reflected, I realized that even within Mahayana teachings there are a lot of contradictions. So having reflected, then I realized the original teachings are found in the early Nikayas. So then I started to write books, and I offended some people. They were very annoyed with me. But I felt that since I came to realize the truth, that I should inform people, because I wasted many years. I wasted 9 years in Mahayana Buddhism, 6 years as a layman, and 3 years as first as a novice monk, then as a monk, and later then I found the real teachings. But unfortunately, I came to realize that even within Theravada, there's a lot of wrong teachings. Those wrong teachings come from the later books, like the Abhidhamma, the commentaries, Visuddhimagga, Jataka stories, and all that. If I were to tell you some of the contradictions, you might be surprised. For example, most of us, we have been brought to think that the Buddha was the son of a king. Yeah, Buddha was not the son of a king. The Buddha was of the what they call the Raja clan, the warrior clan, the Khattiya clan. Like in Malaysia, we have a lot of Rajas and Tunkus, but not all of them are sultans. Because in this royal family, once you are of blue blood, you are called a Raja or a Tunku. It doesn't mean you are a king or a sultan. Yeah. So the Buddha, being of blue blood, he was a Raja. His father was a Raja, but not the king. Because in the Vinaya books, we find, and the suttas, that the Buddha was a citizen of Kosala. Because in the Majjhima Nikaya, King Pasenadi of Kosala, when he was 80 years old, he came to visit the Buddha, and the Buddha was also 80 years old. And then he bowed and kissed the feet of the Buddha and stroked the Buddha's feet and kept saying, I am Pasenadi, I am Raja Pasenadi Bhagawa. So the Buddha asked him, Raja, Maharaja, why do you show such great honor to this body? And then he explained why he has so much veneration, respect for the Buddha, and so much love for the Buddha. And he praised the Buddha and the Sangha in various ways. And all these praises, they call the Buddha at the end. The Buddha told his disciples, this Raja has spoken monuments to the Dhamma. So this sutta is called monuments to the Dhamma. So from here, from that sutta, we learn that the Buddha was a citizen of Kosala. And every country will have only one king, right? The king of Kosala was Pasenadi, King Pasenadi. And sometimes people think that the Buddha's father was the chieftain of the Sakyans. No, he was not even the chieftain of the Sakyans. The chieftain of the Sakyans was a man called Badiya. You would not know because you don't read the Vinaya books. In the Vinaya books, monastic discipline for monks, it is stated that the leader of the Sakyans, Badiya, was persuaded to renounce by his close friend Anuruddha. Anuruddha asked Badiya to renounce many times with him. He refused because he was a chieftain, a special position. So finally, because of his good friend, he renounced. So after he renounced with Anuruddha, within I think 3 months, the first Vasa, he became an Arahant. Okay. So the Buddha's father was not even the chieftain of the Sakyans. So that is misconception that people have. Another thing, a general idea that has been put into people's minds is that the Buddha cultivated paramis for a long time to achieve Buddhahood. This also is not true at all. This concept of paramis or paramitas started later, a few hundred years after the Buddha had passed away. The Buddha himself doesn't know the word parami. He also never heard of the word paramita. So these paramis are based on the Jataka stories. It is especially found in Mahayana. In Mahayana, they say that the Buddha cultivated the paramis, paramitas for a long time. They talk about 6 paramitas. And later, Theravada books also talk about paramis. And in Theravada, they talk about 10 paramis, like the Dana parami, the perfection of giving. This truthfulness, Satcha parami, etc. So when we investigate, so all these stories about paramis are based on the Jatakas. But when we investigate the Jatakas, we find that they are stories supposed to be about the past life of the Buddha, that the Buddha was born as a rabbit, the Buddha was born as Sangkanchil, the deer, and all that. And you see these stories, these animals can talk like human beings. Have you heard animals talking? I've never heard animals talking. I don't believe animals can talk. So also, like certain Jatakas, like they said that once the Bodhisattva was born as a rabbit, and then in the jungle, he saw this hunter hunting the whole day, trying to kill some animal to eat. But he was not successful. The whole day he could not shoot a single animal. So at night when he was trying to cook dinner, it was just boiling water, nothing to eat. So according to the Jataka story, this rabbit jumped into the pot, sacrificed his life, committed suicide just for the hunter to eat. How can the rabbit be so smart? If the rabbit is so smart, it won't be born as a rabbit, isn't it? Even the stories, like for example, Vesantara Jataka, where it said Bodhisattva in a previous life, to perfect his parami of giving, he gave away his wife and 2 children to a heartless beggar. He knows the beggar is going to mistreat them, going to beat them and all this. Still, he shed some tears and gave away his wife and son and daughter to this heartless beggar who beat them and all that. No logic. And it contradicts the Dhamma, because in the Dhamma, in the suttas, the Buddha says, a good man's charity should not harm himself and should not harm others. So when you give away your wife and children, you're harming them. and you're harming yourself. No? So it just contradicts the Dhamma. That's why I dare say that it cannot be the Buddha's teaching. Also, this story that the Bodhisattva in a previous life, he was a prince or something, and he was up on the hill and he saw this tigress which had many cubs, and because he was very hungry, he had no milk to give the cubs. So this Bodhisattva jumped down from the hill, committed suicide for the tigress to eat. This again contradicts the Dhamma teaching that you, an intelligent person's dana, must not harm yourself or harm others. Yeah. So if you commit suicide like that, your family will suffer so much. Is it not? So all these Jataka stories are all grandmother stories, just like Aesop's fables, Grimm's fairy tales. Because they have a purpose, they are very good at entertaining children and teaching them a moral value. They cannot be true. Yeah. So you see, there are so many things nowadays that is prevalent, being taught nowadays. Even in Sunday schools, people are teaching the children all this as though it's a real thing. Of course, you can teach Jataka stories because it's very entertaining. And don't tell them that it's a real thing. It's just stories about the Buddha's lifetime. So many things, a lot of things in the Abhidhamma just contradicts the suttas, the commentaries also. Even Visuddhimagga, like a book like the Visuddhimagga, there's a lot of good stuff inside there. But unfortunately, there's also some Dhamma contradictions with the suttas. For example, in the Visuddhimagga, it says, if you practice Anapanasati, the maximum you can achieve is 4 jhanas. But in the suttas, the Buddha says, if you practice Anapanasati, you can achieve all the jhanas, 4 rupa jhanas and 4 arupa jhanas, plus Nirodha Samapatti, cessation of perception and feeling. Everything you can achieve by Anapanasati. So there are various contradictions like that. So unless you take the trouble to investigate, you're not going to find the truth. That's why the Buddha says, whenever a monk says anything the Buddha teaches is such and such, you don't welcome and you don't reject. Compare with the suttas, the earlier suttas. If it follows the suttas, that can be accepted. If not, the Buddha says, reject it. It is not the Buddha's teaching.
We very appreciate Bhante Hari's Dhamma talk because of wisdom and so many things that he will help us to think better and understand better origination, the rules that we have time to time. Thank you, Bhante Hari. Let us together on Hari's name and say Sadhu Shri. Sadhu, Sadhu, Sadhu.
I would, those of you who access the internet, I would encourage you to have a look at our website. Our website is stated in the books that you took and the CDs, vbgnet.org. VBG stands for Vihara Buddha Gautama. So when you access our website, you can see there are talks there in English, in Hokkien, in Mandarin, also some video talks and all that. And also, if you have the time, if you want to practice, you're welcome to come to our forest monastery. Our forest monastery is 15 acres. It's a very quiet place. If you go there, you can follow our schedule. We meditate twice a day. Once in the morning at 4:30 to 6:30. And in the afternoon, 4 o'clock, we do a bit of chanting. And then 4:30, we meditate until 7 p.m. And during the Vassa, the rains retreat, we are going to have this novitiate program for Samaneras, 3 months, novitiate program. And during the Vassa, I will speak on the Majjhima Nikaya practically every night. I hope to finish the Majjhima Nikaya Suttas in this coming Vasa. Last Vasa, I spoke on the Samyutta Nikaya. And this Vasa, I intend to speak and complete the Majjhima Nikaya in English. So you're welcome to come. Come, we transfer merit now. We think of all beings.